The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been checking my phone obsessively, waiting for the delivery notification. The package was supposed to arrive by 10 p.m., according to the tracking information. So when I heard that familiar chime echo through my apartment, relief washed over me. Finally, I live alone in a third-floor walk-up in Portland, Oregon. One of those converted Victorian houses where the walls are thin, and you can hear Mrs. Chen's television through the floor. It's not the safest neighborhood, but it's what I can afford on a graphic designer's salary. The building has 6 units, and most of my neighbors keep to themselves, which suits me fine. I've been expecting this package for 3 days. It contained portfolio materials for a freelance job interview. The kind of opportunity that could change everything for me. The client had specifically requested physical samples, not digital files, which seemed old-fashioned but not entirely unusual in my field. When I opened the door, something felt immediately wrong. The man standing in my hallway wasn't wearing any kind of uniform. No UPS brown, no FedEx purple, no Amazon vest. Just dark jeans and a black hoodie pulled up over his head. Despite the warm October evening, he held a small cardboard box in his hands. Maybe the size of a shoebox, but lighter, judging by how effortlessly he gripped it. Delivery for Sarah Martinez. His voice was gravelly, like he'd been smoking for decades. I nodded, extending my hand for the package, but he didn't move to give it to me. Instead, he stepped closer to my doorway, close enough that I could smell cigarettes and something else. Something metallic and sharp. "You need to open this right now," he said, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "It's important." Every instinct I had screamed danger. Delivery drivers don't ask you to open packages. They hand them over, maybe ask for a signature, and leave. They don't linger in doorways making demands. "I'm sorry, who are you with?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady while my hand moved instinctively toward the door, ready to slam it shut. He ignored my question. "Just open it. There's something inside you need to see. A message." The way he said message made my blood turn cold. There was something predatory in his expression. Something that suggested this had nothing to do with my portfolio materials or any legitimate delivery. "I think there's been a mistake," I said, starting to close the door. "I'll call the company tomorrow." His foot shot out, wedging itself in the doorframe before I could shut him out completely. The sudden movement was so quick, so aggressive, that I stumbled backward into my apartment. "Don't be difficult, Sarah," he said. And the fact that he knew my name, really knew it, not just read it off a label, sent terror shooting through my veins. We both know why I'm here, but I didn't know. I had no idea who this man was or what he wanted from me. My mind raced through possibilities. Was this about work? Had I unknowingly designed something for the wrong client? Was this some kind of mistaken identity situation? He pushed the door open wider and stepped into my apartment uninvited. I backed toward my kitchen, where I kept a knife block on the counter. The apartment suddenly felt impossibly small, every piece of furniture an obstacle between me and safety. "Open the box, Sarah." His voice was patient now, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Then we can talk about what happens next." My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone, but he was faster. He lunged forward and knocked it out of my grasp, sending it skittering across the hardwood floor toward the couch. "No phones," he said. "Not yet." That's when I noticed his hands. His fingernails were dirty, caked with what looked like dried blood or rust. There were scratches across his knuckles, fresh ones that hadn't healed yet. Whatever this man had been doing recently, it involved violence. The box in his other hand seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. It was taped shut with clear packing tape, but something about it looked wrong. The cardboard was slightly dented, as if it had been opened and resealed multiple times. "What's in the box?" I whispered. He smiled then, and I saw that one of his front teeth was chipped. "Something that belongs to you, something you lost." I had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't lost anything recently. Certainly nothing important enough to warrant this kind of terrifying delivery service. "I think you have the wrong person," I said, continuing to back toward the kitchen. "My name is Sarah Martinez, but there are probably a lot of Sarah Martinez's in Portland. Maybe you're looking for someone else." 1247 Elm Street, apartment 3B. he recited. 26 years old, works for Morrison Design Studio, drives a blue Honda Civic with license plate number JKL 4429. Parents live in Sacramento. Sister Emma lives in Seattle with her boyfriend Marcus. My knees nearly buckled. He knew everything about me, not just my name and address, but details about my family, my car, my job. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. This was targeted. How do you know all that? I managed to ask. I know a lot of things about you, Sarah. I've been watching you for weeks. The words hit me like a physical blow. Watching me for weeks, suddenly. All those little moments over the past month made horrible sense. The feeling of being followed when I walked to my car after work. The sense that someone had been in my apartment when I came home. The strange phone calls with no one on the same home. The strange phone calls with no one on the other end. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to open the box, he said. And then I want you to understand what you've done. I haven't done anything. His expression darkened. You really don't remember, do you? I reached the kitchen counter and felt behind me for the knife block. My fingers found the handle of what felt like a large chef's knife, and I gripped it tightly, though I kept it hidden behind my back. Remember what? I asked. October 15th, 2022. The intersection of Burnside and 23rd, around 11:30 at night. The date meant nothing to me. I tried to think back to what I would have been doing that night over a year ago, but I came up blank. October 2022 had been a busy time at work. We were launching a major campaign for a local restaurant chain, and I'd been pulling long hours. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. You were driving home from work, late night at the office. You were tired, maybe a little distracted. His voice was getting more intense, more angry. You didn't see him until it was too late. A cold realization began creeping over me. He was talking about a car accident, but I'd never been in a car accident. I was sure of it. I would remember something like that. You hit him, the man continued. My brother, Danny. He was crossing the street, and you hit him with your car. No, I said, shaking my head. Ain't you? No, that's not. I've never hit anyone. I would remember. You drove away, he interrupted. You left him there to die. The accusation was so shocking, so completely wrong, that for a moment I couldn't speak. I had never been involved in a hit-and-run accident. I had never hurt anyone with my car. This man was either completely delusional, or had me confused with someone else. You're wrong, I said firmly. I've never been in an accident. I've never hit anyone. You have the wrong person. Blue Honda Civic, he said. License plate JGL 4429. The police found paint chips at the scene that matched your car. That's impossible. But even as I said it, a tiny seed of doubt began to grow in my mind. October 2022 had been a stressful time. I had been working late nights, driving home exhausted. Was it possible that something had happened that I'd somehow blocked out or forgotten? No. I would remember hitting someone. That's not the kind of thing you forget. Open the box, Sarah, he said again. See what you did to him. I didn't want to know what was in that box. Every fiber of my being screamed that whatever was inside would be horrible, traumatic, designed to break me down psychologically. But I also knew that this man wasn't going to leave until I complied with his demands. With my free hand, I reached for the box. He handed it to me, and I was surprised by how light it was. If there was something significant inside, it couldn't be very large. I set it on the kitchen counter and used my fingernail to pick at the tape. My hands were shaking so badly that it took several attempts to get a corner loose. Hurry up, he said. I peeled back the tape and opened the cardboard flaps. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, was a photograph. It showed a young man, maybe early 20s, lying on pavement. His face was bloody and swollen, his limbs bent at unnatural angles. He was clearly dead or dying. The image was so graphic, so brutal, that I immediately looked away. That's Danny, the man said. That's what you did to him. I didn't do this, I whispered. I swear to you, I didn't do this. The police gave up, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Said there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute. But I never gave up. I spent months tracking down every blue Honda Civic in the city. I found you. I stared at the photograph, trying to process what I was seeing. The scene looked real. The blood, the injuries, the way the body was positioned on the asphalt. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never been involved in anything like this. "This is someone else," I said. "You have the wrong person. I'm not who you're looking for. Stop lying," he shouted, his composure finally cracking. "I know it was you. I have proof." He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. From it, he extracted what looked like official documents. Police reports, maybe, or insurance papers. "Vehicle registration," he said, waving one of the papers at me. "Blue 2019, Honda Civic. License plate SHAA44429. Registered to Sarah Elena Martinez, 12447 Elm Street. Apartment 3B. The information was correct, but that didn't mean anything. Anyone could look up vehicle registration information if they knew how." "Paint analysis," he continued, showing me another document. "Blue metallic paint found at the scene matches the factory paint used on 2019 Honda Civics." "That's not proof," I said. "There are thousands of blue Honda Civics in Portland. The paint could have come from any of them." "Witness statement," he said, pulling out a third paper. "Someone saw a blue Honda Civic leaving the scene. They got a partial plate number. JKL. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The evidence he was presenting seemed compelling, but I knew it was wrong. I knew I had never hit anyone with my car, unless a horrible thought occurred to me. What if someone had stolen my car? What if someone had used my vehicle to commit this crime, and then returned it without my knowledge? I tried to remember if there had been any signs that my car had been tampered with or driven by someone else around that time. "Even if all of this is true," I said, "it doesn't prove that I was driving. Someone could have stolen my car." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're really going to stick with that story? It's not a story. It's the truth." "Then explain this," he said, pulling out one final document. It was a photograph clearly taken from a security camera. The image was grainy and dark, but it showed someone who looked like me getting into a blue Honda Civic. The timestamp read October 15th, 2022, 11:27 p.m. I stared at the photograph, my mind reeling. The person in the image did look like me. Same height, same build, same long dark hair. But the image was too blurry to make a positive identification. "That could be anyone," I said weakly. "It's you, Sarah. And now, you're going to pay for what you did." He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a knife. A hunting knife with a serrated blade that gleamed under my kitchen lights. That's when I knew I was going to die. All the evidence, all the accusations, all of the psychological torture, it had all been leading to this moment. This man believed I had killed his brother, and now he was going to kill me in return. I gripped the kitchen knife tighter behind my back. I had one chance to defend myself, and I would have to make it count. "Please," I said, trying to buy time. "If you kill me, you'll go to prison. Is revenge worth spending the rest of your life behind bars?" "Danny was worth everything," he said. "He was the only family I had left." "Then let the police handle this. If you really have evidence that I was involved, take it to them. Let the justice system." "The justice system failed," he screamed. "They had all this evidence and they did nothing. They said it wasn't enough for a conviction." He stepped closer, raising the knife. I could see the madness in his eyes, the grief and rage that had consumed him for over a year. "I'm sorry about your brother," I said. "I'm sorry he died. But killing me won't bring him back." "No," he said, "but it will make things even." He lunged at me then, the knife aimed at my chest. I dodged to the side and brought my own knife up, slashing wildly. The blade caught him across the forearm, and he howled in pain and surprise. Blood splattered across my kitchen counter as he stumbled backward. He looked down at his wounded arm, then back at me with an expression of pure hatred. "You cut me," he said, as if he couldn't believe it. "Stay back," I shouted, holding the knife out in front of me. I'll call the police. No, you won't, he said, advancing again despite his injury. Because you know I'm right. You know what you did. But I didn't know. Even with all his evidence, even with the photographs and documents, I knew in my heart that I had never killed anyone. I would remember something like that. The guilt alone would have destroyed me. He came at me again, and this time I was ready. I ducked under his swing and drove my knife into his side, just below his ribs. He gasped and doubled over, dropping his own weapon. I ran for my phone, snatching it off the floor where he'd knocked it earlier. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. 911? What's your emergency? There's a man in my apartment. I gasped. He tried to kill me. I think I stabbed him. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Are you in immediate danger? I looked back toward the kitchen. The man was on the floor, clutching his side. But he was still conscious and still looking at me with murderous intent. I don't know, I said. He's hurt, but he's still here. Officers are on their way. Can you get to a safe location? I ran to my bedroom and locked the door behind me, though I knew it wouldn't stop him if he really wanted to get in. The police arrived within minutes. I heard them pounding on my front door, shouting commands. There was some kind of struggle in the kitchen, then silence. When they finally let me out of my bedroom, the man was gone. Where is he? I asked. Ambulance took him to the hospital, one of the officers said. He'll live. But he lost a lot of blood. They took my statement, photographed the scene, collected the evidence the man had brought with him. The documents, the photographs, the box, all of it went into evidence bags. Do you know this man? The detective asked me. No, I said. He claimed I killed his brother in a hit-and-run accident last year. But I've never been in an accident. I've never hurt anyone. The detective nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The evidence the man had presented was compelling, even if it wasn't conclusive. We'll investigate, he said. In the meantime, you might want to stay somewhere else for a few days, just in case he has friends. I spent the next week at my sister's house in Seattle, jumping at every sound, checking and rechecking the locks on her doors. The police called me twice with updates, but they didn't have much to report. The man, whose name was Michael Torres, had been charged with breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder, but he wasn't talking, and his public defender had advised him to remain silent. The investigation into the hit-and-run case was reopened, but after 2 weeks, the detective called to tell me they'd found no evidence linking me to the crime. The paint analysis was inconclusive. The witness statement was too vague, and the security camera footage was too blurry to make a positive identification. As far as we can determine, the detective said, you had nothing to do with Daniel Torres's death. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt vindicated. But instead, I felt hollow, haunted by questions I couldn't answer. If I wasn't responsible for Danny Torres's death, then who was? And why had Michael Torres been so convinced it was me? I moved out of my apartment the following month. I couldn't stand being in that kitchen where it had happened. Couldn't stop seeing Michael Torres's face every time I walked through my front door. But even in my new place, even with new locks and a security system, I don't feel safe. Because sometimes late at night, I find myself thinking about October 15th, 2022. I try to remember what I was doing that night, where I was, what route I took home from work. And the terrifying truth is, I can't remember. I can't remember anything about that night at all. Some packages are best left unclaimed, son. Mr. Abernathy's voice was low, his eyes like chips of granite, and the way he looked at that heavy wooden crate. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat that smelled faintly of sawdust, old metal, and something else, something vaguely chemical and deeply unsettling. My name is Leo. For a 6-month stint, trying to save up some cash after college, I worked at the Central Mail Recovery Center, the dead letter office, basically. It was a vast, echoing warehouse on the industrial outskirts of the city, a purgatory for lost, damaged, and undeliverable mail. My job was mostly sifting through mountains of forgotten correspondence, trying to find a return address, a clue, anything to reunite package with owner. Most of it was mundane, forgotten birthday gifts, misaddressed online orders, until the crate arrived. The first time I heard the sound, I was in the high-value unclaimed cage, a chain-link enclosure where we kept anything that looked even remotely expensive until it could be auctioned off. It was late, well past midnight, and I was alone in that section of the warehouse. A soft, almost inaudible thump drag came from the far end of aisle 7, where the oversized, unprocessable items were stored. I froze, listening. The warehouse was usually a symphony of hums and clicks from the conveyor belts, but this section was dead quiet. Probably just a stack of boxes settling, I muttered, trying to shake off the sudden chill that had crawled up my spine. But as I glanced down the long, shadowy aisle, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of movement, a shadow detaching itself from another shadow, then gone. Was it just the isolation of the night shift? Or did this place hold more than just lost mail? The crate showed up a few days later. It wasn't like anything else we usually got. It was large, at least 4 feet by 3, made of rough dark wood, heavily reinforced with metal bands, and secured with thick industrial-looking bolts instead of nails. There was no shipping label, no return address, no markings at all, except for a single stenciled black number. 72. It was heavy, too. It took 2 of us to move it off the loading dock with a hand truck. It just appeared one morning, sitting amongst a pile of damaged luggage. Mr. Abernathy, my shift supervisor, a gaunt, quiet man who'd worked at the dead letter office for what seemed like a century, just grunted when I asked about it. Came in on the late truck. No manifest. Just leave it be for now. But his eyes kept darting towards it, a strange, almost fearful tension in his usual stoic demeanor. The crate sat in aisle 7 for a week, a silent, imposing presence. The faint, odd smell I'd noticed earlier seemed to emanate from it. That mix of old wood, metal, and something else. Something sharp and sterile, like a hospital, but with an underlying hint of something. Organic. I started noticing things. The dust on the floor around the crate seemed undisturbed, except for a single set of faint, muddy boot prints leading to it, then stopping. Prints that weren't mine, and didn't match Abernathy's worn work shoes. And sometimes, late at night, when the warehouse was at its quietest, I'd hear that soft thump drag again, seemingly coming from the direction of aisle 7. Or was it from inside the crate itself? My curiosity became a gnawing obsession. What was in there? Why no labels? Why Abernathy's strange nervousness? He'd specifically told me, and the other night shift guy, a jumpy kid named Sal, to leave crate 72 alone. It's above our pay grade. It'll be dealt with. Dealt with how? By whom? Am I just being paranoid? I asked Sal one night, as we shared a lukewarm coffee. Or is there something seriously weird about that crate? Sal just shrugged, his eyes wide. Dude, I don't even look at it. Abernathy gets that creepy look on his face whenever anyone even mentions aisle 7. I just sort my mail and count the minutes till dawn. One Thursday night, Abernathy called in sick, a rare occurrence. The warehouse felt even more cavernous, more isolated. Sal was jumpy, seeing shadows in every corner. The thump drag from aisle 7 was more persistent. And the smell? It was definitely stronger. That chemical organic odor making my stomach churn. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I found a heavy-duty crowbar in the maintenance closet. Sal looked horrified. Leo? Man, don't. Abernathy will have our hides. He's not here, I said, my voice sounding braver than I felt. And I can't just leave it. What if someone or something is in there? The metal bands on the crate were thick, but the wood was old. I wedged the crowbar under the lid. It groaned in protest. Sal was practically vibrating with anxiety, muttering about losing his job. With a sudden splintering crack, one corner of the lid popped up, just an inch or two. I shone my flashlight into the narrow gap. My breath caught in my throat. The interior was padded with thick, dark, gray foam. and I saw metal, gleaming, polished steel, what looked like heavy leather straps with thick buckles, and a tray of tools, not workshop tools. These were slender, precise, with sharp, wicked-looking points and strangely curved ends. Clinical, surgical, but not for healing. A wave of nausea and pure, undiluted terror washed over me. This wasn't unclaimed merchandise. This was a kit, a specialized horrifying kit. And the smell. It was the smell of fear, of disinfectant trying to mask something far worse. "Leo, behind you!" Sal shrieked. I whirled around, my heart leaping into my throat. Mr. Abernathy stood at the end of aisle 7, his face a mask of cold fury, his eyes like chips of ice. He wasn't supposed to be here. He held a heavy, old-fashioned nightstick. "I told you to leave it be, son," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He took a step closer. Some packages are best left unclaimed, for everyone's sake. He wasn't just a supervisor protecting company property. He was a guardian of whatever horror that crate represented. His motive was clear. Silence. Containment. He moved with a surprising speed for a man his age, raising the nightstick. There was no time to think. I shoved the crowbar at his legs, a desperate, clumsy move. He stumbled, cursing. Sal, to his credit, yelled, a surprisingly loud sound in the vast warehouse. I didn't wait. I scrambled back, away from the crate, away from Abernathy. He lunged for me, but I was younger, faster. I ran. Sal, a panicked shadow behind me, out of the warehouse, into the cold, indifferent night. We called the police from a payphone miles away. We told them everything. The crate, the tools, Abernathy's threat. When the police finally raided the Central Mail Recovery Center hours later, Crate 72 was gone, vanished without a trace. Aisle 7 was just another row of dusty, unclaimed packages. Mr. Abernathy was there, calm, cooperative, expressing concern over our overwrought imaginations and possible drug use. He had an alibi for being out of town the night he'd supposedly called in sick. There was no physical evidence. Nothing. Nothing. Sal and I both quit, or were encouraged to resign. The official story was that we'd panicked over a misidentified piece of specialty equipment. But I know what I saw. That padded interior, those straps, those gleaming, terrible tools, and Abernathy's eyes. I don't know what was truly in Crate 72, or where it was going, or where it came from. Was it evidence being disposed of? Tools for some unspeakable trade? Lost in transit? Or was the dead letter office itself a drop point? A way station for things that thrived in the darkness? Things that should never see the light of day? Mr. Abernathy, I heard, retired shortly after. A man who took his secrets with him. I still have nightmares about that crate. About the smell. About the cold, dead weight of what it might have truly contained. And sometimes, when I see a plain, unmarked wooden box, or catch a whiff of that particular chemical scent, a chill goes through me. Because I know that some packages aren't just lost. They're deliberately forgotten. And prying them open can unleash more than just their contents. It can unleash the terrifying knowledge of what some people are capable of, and what secrets the world prefers to leave unclaimed. The sound of the doorbell jolted me from a deep sleep, the kind that leaves you groggy and disoriented. I squinted at the clock on my nightstand. 10:47 a.m. I had meant to sleep in, to escape the haze of work and responsibilities for just a few more hours. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep, and stumbled toward the front door, my mind still foggy. As I opened the door, the sunlight poured in, momentarily blinding me. Standing on my doorstep was a postal worker, holding a small, certified letter. "Sign here, please," he said, his tone flat, barely hiding his impatience. I took the clipboard from him, still half asleep. "What's this about?" "Just a letter," he replied, glancing at his watch. "Signature required." I signed quickly, and he handed me the envelope. already turning to leave. I barely had a moment to process the situation as I closed the door. The envelope was unmarked, save for the official postal markings. No return address. Just my name and my home address. I tossed it on the kitchen table and went to brew some coffee, the familiar ritual soothing my nerves. But as I waited for the coffee to drip, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in my stomach. Something about the letter felt off, and I didn't know why. As the coffee brewed, I picked up the envelope again, running my fingers over its smooth surface. I hesitated, then tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and as I read the words, my blood ran cold. I know what you did last summer, and I'm coming to collect. My heart raced. What the hell did that mean? The words seemed to echo in my mind, a taunting reminder of things I'd rather forget. It wasn't just the message that unsettled me. It was the implication. Someone knew something. The sound of the coffee pot bubbling snapped me back to reality. I poured a cup, trying to calm myself. The familiar aroma should have been comforting, but it only heightened my anxiety. I glanced at the window, the blinds partially closed. Had I seen movement outside? A flicker of something in my peripheral vision? I brushed it off, convincing myself I was just imagining things. After a few moments of pacing, I grabbed my phone and texted my friend Mia. "Hey, got a weird letter today. Just some creepy message." I hit send and waited for her response. As I stood there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. Scanning the street outside, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Just the usual suburban tableau. Cars passing by, kids playing, a dog barking in the distance. But then, I spotted something strange. A man in a blue hoodie, standing across the street, just outside the park. He was looking in my direction, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his face obscured by the shadows of the hood. My heart raced again, the feeling of being watched intensified. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. "You're overreacting," I muttered to myself. "It's just a guy in a hoodie, probably waiting for someone." When Mia finally replied, I felt a flicker of relief. "Creepy. What did the letter say?" I typed quickly, telling her about the message. Another few minutes passed, but the unease didn't leave. I returned to the window, but the man was gone. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, until I noticed the shadow of the man had moved closer to my house. I quickly stepped back from the window, heart racing, fighting the urge to panic. The logical part of my brain told me to call the police, but I didn't want to sound ridiculous. After all, it could just be a coincidence. My phone buzzed again. Mia's check-in. "Hey, are you okay? Is the guy still there?" I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to check again, but the thought of facing the window filled me with dread. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before glancing outside once more. He was standing there right in front of my house, staring straight at me. His eyes were hidden beneath the hood, but I could feel them on me, studying me. Panic surged through me. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, fingers trembling. "Yes, I need help. There's a man outside my house, and I think he's been watching me. Stay inside and lock your doors," the dispatcher said calmly. "Help is on the way." I locked the door and retreated to the back of the house, heart racing. I listened for any sounds, footsteps, movement, but everything was silent except for my breath. I forced myself to think logically. Was I overreacting? Maybe he was just a passerby. I paced the kitchen, trying to shake off the dread, but then I remembered the letter. The way it had felt in my hands, the ominous words echoing in my mind. I was no longer just a bystander in this situation. I had become part of something darker, something that felt alive. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the sirens approaching. Relief flooded through me, but as I moved to the front of the house, I caught sight of the man again. He was gone from my line of sight, but I could see the front yard and the street. A police car pulled up, lights flashing, and I rushed outside to meet the officers. I quickly explained everything, pointing towards the street. He was standing right there. The officers looked around, scanning the area. "What did he look like? one asked, taking notes. Just a guy in a blue hoodie. He was watching me. Anyone else see him? Another officer called out to neighbors. No one has seen anyone suspicious. One of them replied, shaking their head. Just the usual folks. The officers exchanged glances, and my heart sank. Had I imagined it? Had it all been a trick of the mind? A manifestation of my own fears? As they continued to search the area, I felt the tension in my chest ease slightly. But that relief was short-lived. Something caught my attention. An envelope lying on the ground, partially hidden by the bushes near the front steps. I approached it cautiously, picking it up. It was addressed to me, but there was no return address, just my name scrawled in messily written handwriting. I tore it open, trembling, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. My heart sank as I read the words. I'll be watching you, Morgan. You can't hide from me. The officers turned to me, concern etched on their faces. What is it? One asked. I held up the note. But before I could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the side of the house. I turned, heart racing, but it was too late. The man from earlier emerged from the shadows, his face partially illuminated by the streetlight. He looked different now, more menacing, more determined. Was I interrupting? He said, voice dripping with mock sincerity. Panic surged through me like an electric shock, and I stumbled backward, feeling the weight of the world crash down. The officers moved quickly, but the man was faster, darting toward me, his hand reaching out. Get back! I screamed, the adrenaline pushing me into survival mode. The officers shouted commands, but the man was already closing the distance. In a split second, I turned and ran, adrenaline coursing through my veins, propelling me forward. I felt the world blur around me as I sprinted away from the impending threat. The officers tried to restrain him, but he was quick, slipping through their grasp like a ghost. I dashed toward the driveway, the sound of footsteps pounding behind me. I could hear the officers shouting, calling for backup, but all I focused on was the distance between me and the man. I reached my car and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock the door. Just as I managed to get it open, I turned to look back. The man was standing at the edge of the driveway, watching me with that same malevolent smile. Run, Morgan! The officer yelled, breaking through the chaos. But it was too late. I jumped into the car, slamming the door and locking it just as he lunged forward. But I could see the determination in his eyes. He was still coming for me. The sirens wailed as I threw the car into reverse, backing out onto the street. As I sped away, I glanced back one last time. The man stood in the driveway, watching me disappear into the night, a ghostly figure against the chaos. In the aftermath, the police caught him. They found out he had been stalking me for weeks, following my social media, learning my routines. The envelope had been a final warning, a sick game to see how close he could get. I moved shortly after, trying to escape the shadows he had cast over my life. But every time I hear a knock at my door or see a figure linger in the distance, I feel that familiar knot of fear tighten in my chest. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there, watching, waiting. Because the truth is, the worst part of being followed is knowing that the watcher can blend in anywhere, and you might never see them coming until it's too late. The sound of my mailbox slamming shut echoed across the quiet Denver suburb at 6:23 a.m. I was making coffee in my kitchen when I heard it. That distinctive metallic clang that meant the mail carrier had arrived unusually early. Through my window, I watched the postal truck disappear around the corner, but something felt off. The mail doesn't usually come until noon on Thursdays. I'm David Chen, a 34-year-old software engineer who's lived in the same modest two-bedroom house for 8 years. My neighbors know me as the quiet guy who keeps his lawn trimmed and waves politely when we cross paths. Nothing exciting ever happens on Maple Street. But as I stepped outside to check my mail, I noticed Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street watching me through her curtains. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. That was strange. We'd always been friendly. The mailbox was empty. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in my neighborhood. Conversation stopped when I walked by. The grocery store clerk, who usually chatted about the Broncos, barely made eye contact. Even my coworker Jake seemed distant during our lunch meetings. "You okay, man?" I asked him Tuesday afternoon. "You seem weird." Jake's response chilled me. "Are you okay? That's the question." Wednesday evening, I found my garbage cans knocked over, contents scattered across my driveway. The bags had been torn open methodically, like someone was searching for something specific. I cleaned it up, telling myself it was probably raccoons, but raccoons don't usually arrange trash in neat piles. That night, I installed a doorbell camera. Thursday morning at 5:47 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of car doors slamming. Multiple car doors. I stumbled to my bedroom window and felt my blood turn to ice. 3 police cruisers sat in my driveway, their red and blue lights painting my house in ominous colors. The doorbell rang. No, pounded. Bang, bang, bang. "Police, open up! We have a warrant!" My hands shook as I pulled on clothes and stumbled to the front door. Through the peephole, I saw 4 officers in tactical gear, hands resting on their weapons. David Chen, the lead officer's voice was stern. "Professional. We need to search your premises." "Search for what?" I stammered. "I don't understand." "We received detailed information about evidence related to a planned crime," he said, pushing past me into my living room. "Someone sent us a letter with very specific locations in your house." "What crime? What letter?" He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded to his team, and they spread throughout my house like a military operation. I heard them in my basement, my bedroom, my kitchen. Drawers opening, furniture moving, floorboards creaking under their boots. "Check behind the water heater," one officer called out. "Letter says there should be something taped there." My stomach dropped. Someone had told them exactly where to look. Someone who knew my house intimately. Found it. The voice came from my basement. They brought up a plastic bag containing what looked like photographs and documents. I had never seen them before in my life, but the officer's expression told me they were significant. "Sir, you need to come with us," he said, reaching for his handcuffs. "Wait, I don't know what that is. Someone planted it." That's what they all say. As they led me away in handcuffs, I saw neighbors standing in their doorways, watching. Mrs. Rodriguez had her phone out, recording. The mailman stood frozen at the end of my driveway, holding a stack of letters. At the station, Detective Morrison showed me the anonymous letter. It was typed on plain white paper, postmarked 3 days earlier from downtown Denver. The letter described in chilling detail how I was planning to commit a series of break-ins in the neighborhood, complete with a hand-drawn map of my house, showing where I'd supposedly hidden stolen items and planning materials. "Whoever wrote this knows your house better than you do," Morrison said. "They knew about the loose floorboard in your bedroom, the hollow space behind your water heater, even the fact that you keep a spare key under the fake rock by your back door." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Someone had been inside my house multiple times, studying it, mapping it, preparing to destroy my life with surgical precision. "Who has access to your home?" Morrison asked. I thought desperately. My ex-girlfriend Sarah, but we'd ended things amicably 2 years ago. My brother Tom, who had a spare key. A few co-workers who'd been to barbecues. The contractor who'd fixed my roof last month. "I want a lawyer," I said. "They released me on bail, but the damage was done." Local news picked up the story. Software engineer arrested in planned neighborhood crime spree. My employer placed me on administrative leave. Neighbors avoided eye contact. But the worst part was the letters that kept coming. Every few days, another anonymous tip arrived at the police station. Someone claiming to have seen me casing houses. Another reporting suspicious activity in my backyard. Each letter contained details that only someone watching me constantly could know. What time I left for work, what I wore, what I ate for dinner. The handwriting analysis came back inconclusive. The fingerprints on the letters belonged to dozens of postal workers and police officers. Whoever was doing this understood exactly how to stay invisible while destroying my life. 6 months later, the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, but my life was over. I lost my job, had to sell my house, and move to a different state. But sometimes, even now, I get letters forwarded from my old address. Plain white envelopes with my name typed perfectly in the center. I never open them anymore, but I can feel them sitting on my kitchen counter, waiting. The worst part, I still don't know who's been watching me all this time, and they're still out there. Somewhere, with a stamp and my forwarding address. The first sign that my quiet Tuesday afternoon was about to curdle into a living nightmare was the thud of a package on my porch. A package that wasn't for me. That, and the dark sedan idling at the end of the cul-de-sac, its windows tinted, its presence a silent, unnerving hum in the otherwise peaceful suburban air. My name is Sarah Hayes. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which means my days are mostly a comfortable blur of deadlines, coffee, and the quiet company of my ginger tabby mittens. 6 months ago, I'd moved to this little rented bungalow on Willow Creek Court, craving exactly this kind of sleepy, tree-lined normalcy. The houses are mostly well-kept, the neighbors a mix of retirees and young families. It felt safe. It felt ordinary. I was expecting a delivery myself, some art supplies, so when I heard the delivery truck rumble away, I didn't think much of it. But the package on my welcome mat wasn't addressed to Sarah Hayes, 112 Willow Creek Court. It was for a Mr. A. Crate, 114 Willow Creek Court. Number 114 was the house next door, a slightly run-down place whose occupant I'd only ever seen as a fleeting shadow behind drawn curtains. The package itself was plain brown wrapping, surprisingly heavy for its size, with no return address, just Crate's name and address scrawled in thick black marker. As I picked it up, I glanced towards the end of the street. That dark sedan. Was it my imagination, or did it pull away a little too quickly once I was back inside? Probably just a coincidence, I told myself. Just someone visiting another neighbor, right? Being a good neighbor, or trying to be. I figured I'd just walk it over. Mr. Crate's house had an air of neglect that always made me vaguely uneasy. The lawn was overgrown, paint peeling from the porch railings. I rang the bell, waited, rang again. No answer. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn tight, as always. I hesitated, then tucked the heavy package securely beside his front door, out of sight from the street. A little act of kindness. That's all it was. Later that evening, as I was making dinner, I saw movement from my kitchen window. Mr. Crate, a gaunt, shadowy figure I rarely saw in daylight, slipped out his front door, snatched the package, and disappeared back inside with a furtive, almost guilty haste. He didn't even glance towards my house. The interaction, or lack thereof, left a strange, unsettled feeling in my gut. The next day, the real unease began. A different dark car, this one a beat-up old SUV with heavily tinted windows, was parked across the street from my house for most of the morning. The driver, a bulky silhouette, never got out. They just sat there, occasionally angling their rear-view mirror, seemingly watching my house, or Crate's, or both. When I went out to get the mail, the SUV slowly pulled away, its engine a low rumble. Am I just being paranoid? I muttered to Mittens, who just blinked at me, unimpressed. But the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes, was starting to become a constant, unwelcome companion. That night, the phone call started. 3 of them, spaced about an hour apart. Each time I'd answer, and there would be nothing but silence on the other end. Then a soft, almost inaudible click before the line went dead. Caller ID, unknown. My heart hammered with each call. Coincidence? Wrong numbers? Or was someone checking to see if I was home? Alone? The following afternoon, I came home from a quick grocery run to find my welcome mat slightly askew. Just a tiny detail. Something most people wouldn't even notice. But I noticed. I always left it perfectly straight. And Mittens, usually eager to greet me at the door, was hiding under the sofa, his fur bristled, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He wouldn't come out for an hour. Nothing was missing, nothing broken. But the air in my little bungalow felt violated. Someone had been on my porch. Someone had been close. The climax arrived with the brutal efficiency of a nightmare you can't wake up from. It was just after 10 p.m. I was trying to watch a movie, trying to ignore the knot of fear tightening in my stomach when the banging started on my front door. Not a polite knock. Heavy, demanding, fists against wood. Mittens shot under the bed like a ginger bullet. Mittens shot under the bed like a ginger bullet. I crept to the peephole, my heart pounding. Two men, large, dressed in dark clothing, their faces hard, unsmiling in the dim porch light. They didn't look like any police officers I'd ever seen. No uniforms, no marked car visible. Can I see some ID? I called out, my voice trembling. A harsh laugh. Lady, we're not here to play games. Open the door, or we'll open it for you. Then, the unmistakable, sickening sound of a lockpick being inserted into my deadbolt. I scrambled for my phone, dialing 911, whispering my address, my situation. Just as I hit send, my front door burst open, the cheap lock giving way with a splintering crack. The two men filled the doorway, their eyes cold, predatory. Where is it? The taller one demanded, stepping inside. Where's what? I do not know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb with us, lady. The other one snarled, his gaze sweeping my small living room. The package. For Crate? Where is it? I delivered it to him yesterday. I left it on his porch. They exchanged a look of disbelief, of cold fury. Crate's gone, the tall one said, his voice flat. Skipped town, and his merchandise is missing. And you were the last one seen near his house with it. Merchandise? My blood ran cold. It was just a package. That just a package, lady. It was a shipment of unregistered firearms. High-powered, very expensive. And our associate, Mr. Crate, seems to think you might have gotten curious, or that you know where he stashed it before he bolted. The world tilted. Arms dealer. Illegal firearms. My simple act of neighborly kindness had just made me a target for God knows who. I don't know anything, I cried, backing away. I just delivered a misdirected package. We don't believe you, the tall one said, taking another step. But you're going to tell us, one way or another. He reached into his jacket. I saw the glint of metal. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights filled my front window. Sirens wailed, growing closer. My 911 call. The two men froze, cursed. Cops, one hissed. This ain't over, lady. They turned and bolted out the broken door, disappearing into the night, just as the first police cruiser screeched to a halt outside. The aftermath was a blur of statements, detectives, and a dawning, sickening understanding of the danger I'd been in. Crate, whose real name turned out to be something else entirely, was indeed a known arms dealer, using the quiet suburban rental as a drop point. The package I'd delivered was a crucial part of a larger illegal shipment. His associates were not happy. The police believed my call had likely saved my life. They put me in protective custody for a few days, then helped me relocate. Willow Creek Court, my quiet little haven, was no longer safe. They never caught Crate. His associates melted back into whatever criminal underworld I'd crawled out of. I live in a different state now, under a different name, in an apartment building with a doorman and more security cameras than I can count. I don't accept packages for neighbors anymore. I barely even acknowledge them. That simple act of trying to be helpful, of walking a misdelivered box next door, ripped my life apart. And sometimes late at night, when I hear an unexpected knock, or see a dark car idling on a quiet street, my heart still seizes. Because I know that evil doesn't always announce itself with fangs and claws. Sometimes it arrives in a plain brown wrapper, left on the wrong porch. And you never know what horrors you might be delivering until it's far too late. The package was small, unassuming, a standard padded mailer. But the moment I saw my name, handwritten in stark, blocky capitals, and the absence of a return address, a cold knot formed in my stomach. Then I saw the label beneath my name. Blood type. O negative. My blood type. How could anyone know that? My name is Mark. I work the late shift at a massive global post mail sorting facility on the industrial outskirts of the city. It's a sprawling, cavernous place. All conveyor belts, fluorescent lights, and the constant hum of machinery. Mostly anonymous, repetitive work. I sort returns, the endless tide of things people didn't want, sent back to sender. Usually, it's just another Tuesday, another mountain of packages. Until that package. The first subtle sign that something was off had been a few days earlier. I'd been grabbing a coffee from the break room vending machine, the only soul in there at 3 a.m. I heard a faint click, like a camera shutter, from the darkened end of the long corridor leading to the loading docks. I peered down, seeing nothing but shadows and stacked pallets. Just the building settling. I'd muttered, dismissing the sudden prickle on my skin. But the feeling of unseen eyes lingered. Was it just the isolation of the night shift getting to me? Or was there more to that fleeting sound? The package addressed to me wasn't in the regular returns pile. It was sitting on top of my workstation when I came back from that break, almost like it had been deliberately placed. My supervisor, Henderson, a gruff man who'd seen it all, just shrugged when I asked. Probably a missort from another department, or a weirdo. We get all kinds. But he looked at it a little too long, his brow furrowed. The package felt wrong, too light, yet with a strange, dense core. Back in the relative privacy of the employee locker room, my hands trembled as I carefully sliced it open with my box cutter. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was a standard, sealed biohazard specimen bag, and inside that, a small glass vial filled with dark, viscous liquid. Blood. A neatly printed label was affixed to the vial. Mark Jenkins. O negative. Specimen date, 10/17. Last Tuesday. My full name. My blood type. I've never donated blood in my life. I haven't had so much as a routine blood test in over 5 years. A wave of nausea and terror washed over me. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. Something violating. How? Who? My mind raced. Had I cut myself recently without realizing? Impossible. This was a clinical vial, professionally labeled. The specimen date, October 17th. I'd worked a double shift that day. Felt fine. A little tired maybe, but nothing out of the ordinary. I went straight to Henderson. When he saw the vial, even his usually stoic face went pale. We need to check security footage, he said, his voice grim. The cameras covering the sorting floor were old grainy, but they showed it. Around 2:30 a.m. on the 17th, during my lunch break when I'd been in the break room, a figure in what looked like a standard US mail carrier uniform, dark blue, reflective stripes, had walked calmly onto the sorting floor from an unauthorized access. Point me to the loading docks. They weren't one of our regular US SEPS contacts. I'd never seen them before. They moved with purpose, went straight to my empty workstation, placed the small package there, and then walked out the same way they'd come in. Their face, under the brim of the USPS cap, was entirely obscured by a shadow. The police were called. They took the vial, the package, my statement. They were professional, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. A vial of blood? Delivered by a phantom mail carrier? It sounded like something out of a bad movie. They promised to investigate, to check with local labs, blood banks, but the trail was cold. The UP's uniform could have been a disguise. The access point they used was usually locked, but showed no sign of forced entry. The days that followed were a living hell. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every unfamiliar face in a crowd felt like them. I felt exposed, violated, as if someone had reached into my very veins. The question of how they got my blood was a constant, gnawing torment. Had I been drugged? Had someone entered my apartment while I slept? The locks were fine. No sign of entry. My paranoia grew with each passing hour. I started noticing things. Or maybe I was just looking for them. A dark sedan parked down the street from my apartment. Always there when I left for work. Gone when I got back. The feeling of being watched intensified. No longer confined to the cavernous sorting facility, but following me home. Into my dreams. Then a week later, another package arrived at work. Same plain mailer, same blocky handwriting. This time Henderson intercepted it, called me into his office. His face was grim. "Mark," he said, his voice low, "maybe you should open this with a witness." Inside, another biohazard bag, another vial, but this time, It wasn't blood. It was a single, perfectly preserved, pale blue human eye, suspended in clear liquid. The label read, "We see you, Mark Jenkins. Always." The world tilted. This wasn't just a threat anymore. This was a promise. The eye, it wasn't mine, but whose was it? And what did they want from me? The police escalated the investigation, but they were baffled. No fingerprints on the packages. No leads on the USPS carrier. The blood in the first vial was confirmed to be mine, O negative, but with no indication of how it was obtained. The eye in the second vial, they couldn't identify it. The motive remained a terrifying enigma. Was it a warning? A threat from someone I'd unknowingly crossed? Or was it something more random, more horrifyingly impersonal? The act of a sophisticated sadistic predator who collected more than just mail. The specimen date on my blood vial. What else had happened on October 17th that I didn't know about? I quit my job. I moved out of my apartment. I changed my name, my appearance as much as I could. I live a quiet life now, always looking over my shoulder, trusting no one. The police case remains open, unsolved. Sometimes I'll see a USCPS truck, and my heart will seize, that old cold dread washing over me. I never found out who sent those packages or why, or how they got my blood, or whose eye stared back at me from that second vial. But the most chilling part, the part that keeps me awake at night, is the return to sender stamp that was faintly visible on the back of that first package, almost obscured by a smudge. It wasn't a return from a customer. It looked like it had been processed through our facility, as if it had been mailed to someone else, then redirected, deliberately, to me. As if I wasn't the first recipient on their list. As if I was just another specimen in a collection I can only imagine. And I can't help but wonder whose name was on it before mine, and who will be next. The smell hit me first, a dull, sickly sweetness under the usual post office scent of old paper and floor wax. It wasn't strong, not then. Just a faint, wrong note in the symphony of a slow Tuesday morning, but it was enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. That, and the silence from locker number 7. My name is Ben Carter. And for the past 3 years, I've been a clerk at the Oak Haven post office. It's a small town, the kind where everyone knows your business, and the post office is more of a social hub than a federal building. Most days are a blur of familiar faces, friendly gossip, and the rhythmic thud of the date stamp. Our back room isn't much. Just overflowing mail sacks, dusty shelves, and a bank of old gray metal lockers that nobody's used for years. All except number 7. That one's always been locked. Mr. Henderson, our postmaster, a man who's been here since the Truman administration, always said the key was lost ages ago. Just an empty, forgotten space. Or so we all thought. The first time I really noticed the smell, beyond that initial faint wrongness, was after the morning mail rush. A customer had left a package of what smelled like overly ripe peaches on the counter, and I'd wrinkled my nose. Later, after the peaches were gone, that other smell, the sickly sweet one, seemed to linger, stronger now, clinging to the still air near the back lockers. I remember thinking, did something die in the walls? Old building, small town. It wouldn't be the first time, but why did I feel a sudden cold dread when my eyes landed on locker number 7? The next few days, the smell intensified. It wasn't just sweet anymore. There was an undercurrent of something else, something metallic and vaguely chemical, like old blood mixed with cheap disinfectant. It was strongest near locker 7. I mentioned it to Henderson. He got this strange, pinched look on his face, his usual folksy charm evaporating. "Probably just some old cleaning supplies leaked, Ben," he'd said a little too quickly. "Don't you worry your head about it. I'll air the place out." He didn't. And he started avoiding the back room. I started feeling washed whenever I went back there to sort packages. The silence around locker 7 felt different, heavier, expectant, heavier, Once, I swore I heard a faint, almost inaudible scratch from inside it, like fingernails on metal. I told myself it was rats. Had to be rats. But the sound didn't repeat, and the smell wasn't the smell of a dead rat. This was something else, something human adjacent in its wrongness. The escalation came on a Friday. The smell was unbearable now. A thick, gag-inducing miasma that even the industrial fans couldn't dispel. Customers were complaining. Mrs. Albright, who came in for her pension check every week, actually turned pale and had to step outside. Henderson was nowhere to be found, called in sick, his voice on the phone a strained whisper. That left me and Carol, the part-timer. "We have to open it, Ben," Carol said, her face grim, a dish towel pressed over her nose and mouth. "Whatever's in there, it's not right." I agreed. The thought of what we might find made my stomach churn. But the not knowing, the constant oppressive stench, was worse. Henderson kept a master set of old locker keys in his desk drawer. He told me once years ago that the key for number 7 was missing. But I had a hunch. After a bit of rummaging, I found it. A single, tarnished brass key, tucked away at the very back, separate from the others, with a faded paper tag that just read, 7, do not use. My hands trembled as I approached the locker. Carol stood a few feet behind me, her eyes wide. The key slid into the old lock with a grating sound. It resisted at first, then, with a sickening clunk, the mechanism turned. I pulled the handle. The metal door creaked open with a groan that seemed to echo the dread in the room. The smell that hit us was a physical blow. Overpowering. Vile. I gagged, stumbling back. Carol let out a small, choked cry. Inside, crammed into the small, dark space, was a human form. A girl. Pale, emaciated, her eyes wide and vacant but alive. Barely, she was curled in on herself. A thin metal chain running from a rusty pipe at the back of the locker to a crude cuff around her ankle. Her clothes were tattered, filthy. Beside her, a single, almost empty plastic water bottle and a few crumbs of what might have once been bread. For a heart-stopping moment, none of us moved. Then, the girl's eyes flickered, focused on me. A tiny, almost inaudible whimper escaped her lips. That broke the spell. Carol was already on the phone, her voice a high, hysterical tremor as she screamed for the police, for an ambulance. I knelt by the locker, not knowing what to do, what to say. "We're getting you out," I managed, my own voice a stranger's. "You're safe now." Her eyes, pools of unimaginable suffering, just stared. The aftermath was a blur of sirens, flashing lights, grim-faced paramedics, and even grimmer-faced detectives. The girl, whose name was Emily, had been missing from a neighboring county for over 3 weeks. She'd been abducted from a mall parking lot. How she ended up in that locker in our post office was the horrifying question. The investigation focused on Henderson. He denied everything, of course, claimed he had no idea how she got there. Someone must have broken in. Used the locker. But the do not use key in his desk, his recent strange behavior, the way he'd tried to downplay the smell. It didn't look good. They found out he had a rarely used back entrance to the post office, one that led directly to the storeroom, an entrance no one else knew about. He'd been a pillar of the Oak Haven community for 50 years, a quiet man, a churchgoer. Emily, thankfully, survived, though the physical and psychological scars will last a lifetime. Henderson was arrested. The trial was a local sensation, tearing Oak Haven apart. He never confessed, never explained why. Was it a desperate act of a lonely, disturbed old man? Or was he part of something larger? Something even more sinister that used our quiet little post office as a temporary holding cell. The lost key to Locker 7 had been a lie, a carefully maintained piece of misdirection. The Oak Haven post office has a new postmaster now. The old lockers had been ripped out, the back room renovated, painted a bright, cheerful, almost aggressive yellow. But I don't work there anymore. I couldn't. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I can still smell that faint, sickly, sweet odor, feel that cold dread. And I think about locker number 7, and the silence it held for so long, and I wonder how many other locked doors, and how many other ordinary places are just waiting for someone to find the wrong key and unleash the horrors hidden within.